Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel and my podcast. And today we want to tackle a really super exciting topic, which is artificial intelligence in the music industry. And to help me discuss this, I'm joined by Rory Kenny, who is the CEO and co-founder of Loudly, an AI-powered music platform for creators. Hi, Rory.
Hi, Bernard.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm based in Berlin, Germany.
Very good. Yeah, I was just in Berlin a few weeks ago. Nice place. Lots of
Absolutely.
things happening.
Always busy here.
Yes. So maybe you can tell us about your journey and what led you to co-found Loudly.
Yeah, what a long story I could tell. Let me try and give you the simple, quick version, and it might take a few minutes. So I'm originally from Montreal. I'm Canadian. And back when I was much younger than I am today, I was a musician, so classically trained, and eventually graduated to guitar playing, so like, singer songwriting, etc. I was part of a few bands, most notably a band called Mishima in Montreal, and this was back in the late 1990s. We were part of I think at that time was that kind of the do-it-yourself independent music sort of evolution or revolution. And we put out many records. We toured across Canada and the USA with my best friends who were in the band as well, and we had a great time. I remember very well, working very hard in my other job, which was in a hospital during university, but also just to make the money to afford to be in a band and to pay for recording time, pay for our tours. It was very expensive back then to be in a band, in fact. And then, I kind of stopped that at some points. I also worked in the film and TV industry as an editor and scriptwriter, also as a director for a couple of years, and effectively became very much a struggling artist. I'll say kind of typical cliche persona and lifestyle. I then decided to go to Cambridge University in the UK, and I did an MBA. So I could sort of transition from being an artist into a bit more of a business-focused person who could make a living. And that went really well and was a great experience. And I eventually moved to London, where I planned to stay for a couple of years, but ended up being 10 years. And I had the fortune of working across startups and also large technology companies, getting a lot of great experience in terms of how to run technology businesses and how to work with product people and work with engineering, which was amazing and totally new for me. And then after that, I was looking for a way to go back to my passion area, which was, again, back to music, but from a slightly different angle. So it wasn't that I wanted to pick up my guitar and become a troubadour, but it was more to go back into it from a tech perspective. So I happened to very serendipitously come across a very well-known entrepreneur here in Germany called Jürgen Jaron, who runs an investment vehicle called Bellevue Investments. And we hit it off really well. And he invited me to come to Berlin and to run his startup, which was called Jam Just Add Music. And that company had a music creation app called Music Maker Jam, which allowed anyone with a phone to create music pretty quickly and pretty high quality music. And so with that, I thought about it. I played around with the application, and what struck me was, how far I'd been out of the music kind of industry. And what I hadn't realized is that you could literally make very good sounding music on your phone with this new technology, this new use case. And myself being someone who is very much I was typically a rock, let's call it rock genre guitarist and singer songwriter. And I never tried to attempt ever to make techno music or drum and bass music or house or even hip hop. But suddenly with this mobile app, I was able to do it. And that made me just very excited with the possibility. So I decided, yes, I'm going to quit my job and life in London, which I loved, and moved to Berlin for a new adventure. So I moved to Berlin, and I helped Jürgen run that company for a couple of years. And while I was in that business, we noticed a few things. So first of all, the technology trends were shifting rapidly at a very fast pace, as always in the music industry. And the music creation was advancing very, very quickly in terms of on mobile or even on desktop. and what was available to new creators globally was becoming pretty much incredible.
Mm.
Secondly, AI was starting to be applied not in music, but in other industries, for example, in design and more graphical areas. We saw that happening quite successfully. And so logically, I just thought this is going to eventually going to come to music. And the question is, how will it come? Who's going to create it? Who has a right to do it? How will we deal with content, copyright, etc.? And so I had to look around within our own business, and there was one thing I noticed was that, we had already developed quite a significant catalog of audio sounds. So I don't just mean songs, but the actual molecular sounds that go into a track. We had a community that were actually creating tracks from our sounds to the tune of like 200,000 per month. So we had a vast catalog of music that we had a right to use or to train upon. And basically we also owned all the copyright. So with those three pillars in place, I said, we could be a legitimate player for AI if we were to start investing in this technology. So with that, and the second insight that we saw as well was that we saw that our users were using a mobile app device, Music Maker Jam, to make music. They were not spending 10 minutes to make a song, but more like 2 days, sometimes 4 to 5 days, which is a long time to spend in an application, right? In a mobile app, that's a long time to spend. So we saw that even though we had democratized access to music creation, made it as easy as we could in this more manual attempt, obviously we saw that AI could maybe make it a lot easier for people to make music faster, but also maybe also enhance the quality. So with that in mind, we said, okay, let's invest into AI and let's take the big leap into the unknown, because this was probably roughly 5 years ago we made that decision. And so we started to hire AI engineers to start investigating how they could work with our catalog, with our approach. And 5 years later, here we are. We have launched the AI music generator, which is great. But in the background was approximately 3 to 4 years of deep investigation, many experiments. Many of them failed, but we made some very significant breakthroughs in 2022. And then with that confidence in our system and our approach, we launched our beta on May 16th for the Loudly AI music generator. And ever since then, it's been a very exciting journey so far.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So for anyone unfamiliar with Loudly, maybe you can explain what it is, how it is using AI, and what aims you're trying to achieve in the music industry.
Yeah, so Loudly is effectively an AI music creation platform. We use AI, and we've trained it across 10 million songs that we own and have access to. But not just the training itself, but the way that it constructs music is that it reaches into our vast bank of 200,000 plus audio sounds to reconstruct or to construct new music compositions from those sounds. And this is all done with many different AI approaches, all stacked up together. And the beauty of our system is that we use, actually, at the moment, we use only human-produced audio sounds. There's no synthetic media. There's no low-quality synthetic sounds coming out of it. It's all produced in studios, which are actually down the hallway from me by our music producers. So it's human sounds that are used, but then intelligently combined by an AI into what I call coherent and genre-appropriate composition. So every single genre has its own versions of song structure, its own versions of what sounds are applicable. And we've meticulously created algorithms and using AI to learn about those different genres so that the songs come out and they are relevant to that genre. So we really place a huge emphasis on the quality and relevance of the music that we generate. Beyond that, we also have a very big catalog of music that we also license out to creators. So much of that is created by the AI that is sort of harnessed by our music producer. So kind of a human AI combination. And some of it is also just purely human created music. So this catalog is approximately 5,000 songs now that we also license out to creators and to companies who want to use it for their videos, for advertising, etc. So the platform that we have now is somewhere that you can come to generate new music in a few seconds at a click of a few buttons. You can also filter through our existing catalog. And the goal is that every single song that we have in the system can be further customized so that anybody can also modify the music to make it fit their project or their creative ambition. And so very different to previous existing music catalogs, whether it's from a big label or from another production music library. Our whole catalog is effectively music as code, which means that anyone can further modify it, customize it, which is a very new kind of format for the industry. We think it's a much more powerful format because it's much more in line with how people want to create today, which is much more on demand and to suit their tastes and to adapt to their formats.
Very good. So how do you see AI, and in particular the big buzzword generative AI, changing the way we consume music and interact with music in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting area, and I think different companies, different people within those companies, different corners of the industry will have different perspectives on this. The way that I see, and I don't want to maybe talk about too many things, so I'm going to focus on one area which I think is really interesting. We can go a bit deeper on it. So this, for me, is the next big thing I think that AI will accomplish is an evolution of the music format as we know it. So today's music format has not evolved dramatically. It's basically a transfer from analog sound to a digital format. It's what I call a fixed format. So you press play and it goes from beginning to end, and that's pretty much it. So this is the current state of a song file on Spotify. The next evolution, which has already happened, is that we have music as code. So, for example, at Loudly, all our music is effectively interpretable or can be interpreted by machines or by AI, which means that they can be modified instantly. So if music is now can be seen and read as code, then this leads us logically to the next conclusion is that any kind of music as code can be modified by a user with AI or in a system that allows for this to happen. So this is basically becoming inevitable. The technology is there, it exists today. It wasn't so much existing, let's say, several years ago, but today it very much exists. And if that is inevitable, then the next thing that I think is super exciting, which is where it becomes relevant to, let's say, music listeners or music fans, is what I call the interactive music format. So besides just pressing play on let's say, a streaming service and listening passively to a song, you will soon, I think it's going to happen fairly soon, you'll be able to basically start to interact with that music directly and also very easily. So it's not going to be a lot of work. You can just press a few buttons, a few options that are offered to you. But in that sense, you can interact with the music, you can modify it and create variations. So this effectively is an evolution from being a passive listener on streaming sites to become much more of an active, what I call co-creator, right? So if you're a fan or if you're a super fan, then you have a very strong connection to the music you listen to. Maybe you have a strong connection to the genre, to the new releases, but also the songs you love. So why wouldn't you be able to then go a bit deeper into that music? And the intent, I think, is very immediate. It's like you just want to play with that music. You've heard that song a million times. Why not press a few buttons to hear how it could sound a bit differently based on what you want it to sound like? So this is kind of where it's moving. We're having discussions already with quite a few players on how to make this possible. I'm looking forward to delivering a kind of a prototype live demo sometime in the near future. But this allows the streaming companies to get their fans and their users also to kind of engage more in their applications, right? Not just again to play in the background for hours, but to lean in and to personalize the music that they love immediately within the application.
Yeah, amazing, and it triggers so many questions that I'd like to cover at some point later on in the conversation. What it means for creators, what it means for the music industry in the wider sense. But maybe we can go into some use cases first. I'd love to know what use cases in music and AI you are most excited about, and where you see a real promise that they will change the future of music and AI.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, from use cases, I'd like to maybe step back and talk a bit more generally. I can make a few statements, let's say, about where things are moving, and then we can maybe discuss about use cases that come out of this movement. So, number one, I think it's very obvious now that AI will be embedded in pretty much all creative software tools, right? This is also inevitable. It's already happening with, for example, OpenAI and ChatGPT, where you can find ChatGPT type software seamlessly integrated into many, many softwares already, any websites, etc. And this is just going to get bigger and bigger and move faster. It's happening already with generative image generation as well. So with music, it's going to be the same thing. It'll soon be embedded in many different kinds of softwares, whether you're in video creation software or whether you are in digital audio workstation software. You will have AI that is there to deliver some kind of access or enhancement to your operation. So if that's the case, and that is the case, then the next logical thing is that there will be more and more mass adoption, and further democratization of access to AI music creation tools, right? So if that's the case, and we've seen this historically happen already, I believe that there will be billions of people, who will touch creative AI in the next 5 years, right? Because AI is also very affordable. It's not going to be a very expensive piece of software. It's going to be very affordable. It'll be available everywhere. And therefore, the propensity for people to start to be more creative is going to be very high. So if that happens, and we saw this, you could compare it logically to the advance of the digital audio workstation. So when this software came out in approximately 1989, could be debatable, but around that time, it was a bit of software that you could use on your laptop to effectively replace the studio, and is much more affordable, right? So I spent $10,000 for a weekend in the studio to record a whole album, which is a lot of money for me when I was a bit younger. And now you don't have to spend that money at all. You can just do it free. So the digital audio workstation, it took a while to get mass adoption, but effectively, once Bill Gates said, a laptop in every home or a desktop in every office, the fact that there are now something like 50,000 songs uploaded to SoundCloud, Spotify daily is because there is a digital audio workstation available on people's laptops globally. I mean, everyone can access it. Therefore, there are more creators in the market who have access to good technology and can make more high quality music and get distributed to those big platforms. So that democratization happened, it's evidence. But with AI, it'll be even faster because it's just basically accessing the web, right? So we already have the distribution is there. So if that's going to happen, and it will happen, then I would suggest that the next thing that's going to happen is what I'm calling the era of mass creativity. And the era of mass creativity has already started. It's already started with image generation, with creating new kinds of copy or wording with ChatGPT. This has already started, and it's going to happen as well for music. So the era of mass creativity has started. And the question is, what happens as we move through this era, and how will that change the game? Should I continue on this one?
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Yeah, please do.
So, I mean, the big question is, how will this impact artists? So we go back to discussing, let's say, artists and highly talented creatives. What does the era of mass creation mean for them? And this one is tricky because it's an unknown, and there are always unintended consequences from these new technology shifts. But I think what we're going to see in the future is something along the lines of two things I can focus on that will happen. So one is that there'll be a whole new generation of AI first artists. So when I say AI first, I mean people who have creative intent, potentially highly creative people in general, but maybe don't have yet the music ability, right? So, but with AI music creation tools available, they can potentially just go to different platforms and generate music. They can even create their own synthetic artist profiles with image generation. They can create a backstory with ChatGPT with a good prompt. They can even create a kind of a narrative to their, to what their career is about, who they want to speak to. And eventually, with the advent of mixed reality, which is also becoming a bit more democratized as well, they can even put on live shows where they could be either singing, dancing, or not at all, but just pre-programmed. So there will be this advent of, I would call, more synthetic artists that that don't necessarily have to have music ability, but need to have very good sense of curation. So from creator to curator. So curating what kind of music they want to put on their profile, curating their style, their persona, their image, and curating their narrative. So this will probably happen because the tools will be available, and it'll be good enough quality that it should be quite interesting to, let's say, within the cultural zeitgeist. So that's one thing that I think will happen. I think is in itself very interesting, and I can't wait to see what happens there, because it'll be a new kind of creativity, right? The second thing is that those music creators who are highly talented, which is a slim minority of the population, right? I mean, we're talking super talent. How will they respond to this advent of more creators who are potentially more synthetic? And I think the answer is simple. Really highly creative music creators, highly talented people tend to embrace technology. So they will use AI, and they will use it as a new kind of canvas or as a new sandbox. And they will probably seek to elevate themselves beyond what the mass creators can accomplish. So in this version, I think that they will use AI to stretch music as we know it, to create new kinds of formats, probably create new genres of music, and really take a new approach to the creative process. So I think there's, on one hand, you get mass creativity, more synthetic artists, AI first type artists. On the other hand, the ones who are highly creative will just use this technology to further elevate themselves and to stand out from the crowd. So a good example would be, say, Bob Dylan, right? So when he adopted the electric guitar technology, I mean, even though we don't call it technology, at the time, it was effectively technology that allowed to have electric guitars using amplifiers, etc. And it was controversial within his genre, which was folk music, to adopt electric guitars. But he did. And he broke away from convention and he adopted the technology. Because I think at the end of the day, if you are an artist and highly creative, I mean, the temptation was too strong. He suddenly could access a whole new kind of genre. He could access a larger audience. He could play with a new toolkit, which was electronic sonically sounds. And he could also evolve his narrative, his musical legacy. And of course, if we look back in time, our musical history is richer because he made that decision, right? So he expanded his own artistry through the technology adoption. And this isn't only true for music. I mean, it's even more obvious, for example, in the art world. So Andy Warhol being a good example of someone who adopts technology to make a huge statement about art itself. And another example would be, for example, Zaha Hadid, who uses technology in her architectural designs. So the fact that it's going to happen in music is inevitable. And, I look forward to the artist who comes to that same level of prominence that can say, well, I use AI in such a way that I elevated, their game, or elevated the whole, or changed the whole perspective on what music is because they use that technology. This will happen for sure. And I think that's a great positive. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, you paint a really interesting picture of how creativity will evolve. So do you have any tips for creators? I know that quite a few musicians might be worried about this AI revolution and what this might mean for them. How do they prepare themselves for this AI future?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and it kind of suggests, I guess, a few things. It presupposes that there are many people out there who are afraid of AI. So I think the news media, to be honest, loves the headline, which is AI will steal your job, and AI is the end of all creativity, or will threaten the music industry, for example. These are great headlines that sell lots of papers or get lots of clicks. What I know for sure is something a little bit different. There are also many surveys suggesting that people who are, let's say, a little bit younger, so between 16 and 25, are are really open to AI tools as the first thing that they interact with to learn about how something works, right? To learn about how, what is good writing, or what is a well-formatted essay, or what is a well-constructed song, or what is a song in a genre and how is it constructed. They will probably turn to AI potentially first to learn about these things. And so this could be a generational, let's say, perspective, and that's fine, because this is normal for all generations to rebel against things that are new and potentially threatening. But even within our own audiences, we have two kinds of audiences for our application so far. And half of our camp is identify themselves as music creators. So half of our audience right now, which is approximately 60,000 monthly active users, consider themselves to be music creators or songwriters. The other half identify themselves as kind of creators, so video creators, podcasters, even sort of gaming companies who use music in their projects. So these two segments are going to grow anyway. And I think what's great is that the music creators are already interested and curious and want to learn about how AI works. So I think my main tip is, and this is what I tell everyone, is not to be afraid of it, but rather than be afraid and avoid it, it's always good to move towards the challenge, right? It's always good to move towards a problem so you can solve it for yourself. It's always good to move towards the unknown and just start to explore it, because there's no risk, right? So you can, of course, access a music creation platform and just start tinkering around and just learn what it can do and learn about what it can't do very well. And in that process, I think as an artist, you start to understand, well, what is my position on this, but also how can I use this for my own artistry, or I can ignore it for a couple of more months, maybe until it gets a bit better, or the service doesn't cover my genres yet, so I'm not interested, but maybe it will in a couple of months. I think it's all about getting familiar with it, because the technology is rapidly changing, and the productization of the technology is also rapidly evolving. As fast as I can do it for my company, we're doing as fast as we can. So, I mean, we're launching new features every 2 weeks. So, so what you see today with an AI music service will be very different to what you see, even in 2 months' time. So I think with that, be like Bob Dylan, pick up that electric guitar and plug it into your amplifier to hear what your music sounds like. And I think it's the same way that they should approach AI today. It's not to be too afraid, but more to be curious and to learn about it.
And what do you think AI will do to businesses and business models in the music industry? Because they have seen huge change over the last few years to streaming models now. How will this change with AI going forward?
So if there's one thing I've noticed about the music industry, is that it's incredibly resilient. And even though there was this, setback from the transformation from, selling CDs to the streaming age, I think they've come out of it on top, let's say. So, and music industry is a difficult term for me, because there's the artists on one side, there's the labels on the other side, and those are very different camps and have very different interests. And then you have the music streaming platforms on the other side, and they don't necessarily all want the same thing, right? So let's be clear about that. So we could talk about all three camps a bit separately. I think, again, from the artist perspective, it's like I said before, the label potentially, they don't necessarily care how the music is made, because they want to effectively monetize the master recording asset. Like, that's historically the business model, and that's not going to change anytime soon, because they're doing phenomenally well with that model. So from an artist perspective, it's all about embracing every single creativity tool that you can to make your life easier, create better music, get your message out, create your narrative, etc. From the label perspective, I think what's happening on that side is that they're influenced heavily by the economics of the age, and today's economics are primarily dictated, potentially unintentionally, by streaming platforms, right? So how is music monetized on those platforms? So I would say that if I were to look into the glass ball, it's already happened before AI. So the game at the moment is that there's a certain amount of revenue available within the streaming platforms, and so it's like a pie mentality. And the more streams you have, the more revenue of the pie is allocated back to the labels, right? The problem is that there's a huge rise in the DIY labels. Not a problem. It's happening structurally. So the DIY labels, independent labels, also DIY creators who have no labels are getting more and more share of music streams over time. This is happening significantly, for example, in Sweden, I believe, but also globally, which has been backed up in some other media reports. So this is already happening, but with the advent of AI music, and so I can say that today, for example, on a monthly basis, our users generate 300,000 new music tracks per month. And when we just started out. So this is going to evolve to, let's call it 1 million tracks per month will be generated from our platform on a monthly basis. And so if AI music platforms allow creators to distribute the music onto Spotify, into streaming sites, then the pie of songs will grow dramatically. And this could potentially threaten, the revenue opportunity for the big labels who rely upon volume, but also hits, right? So that game is changing pretty rapidly. I think everyone understands the economics around it. And the question is, who's going to make the move to embrace it or to capture that growth? Will it be the distribution platforms? Will it be the labels? Will it be the independent labels? Who's going to make a move here? Because there is a lot of value to be captured with AI music in general. And then thirdly, is the streaming platforms. So how do the streaming platforms handle the advent of AI music? And I don't have an answer for you on that one because I don't work in that company, to understand how would they look at this. What I would say is, going back to what I said before, is that I think they should be embracing the interactive music format as a way to potentially monetize superfans more. Make payouts back to artists where the songs are being interacted with by the users, and also let the fans engage more with their platform. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there on the big streaming platforms to embrace AI technology in a way that is really a win-win-win for every single player.
Yes, super interesting. Whenever you talk about the impact of the music industry and monetization, this is all closely related to copyright and ownership, which is always a big topic when we talk about AI, especially generative AI. On various different levels, how do we make sure that artists that put music out there and then suddenly people use their music, change it, interact with it, as you said, how do we make sure they get a fair share of whatever it is, but also how we use existing music to train our AIs. We've seen the Hollywood strike where creatives basically say, okay, we are scared of AI. We need to make sure it is used appropriately. We see authors currently suing large language model operators to say actually lots of their books have been used in the training of those models. So if I want an article written in the style of a certain author, and this book was used to train the model, but maybe was an illegal copy that was available on the internet. How do we make sure we tackle this? How does Loudly tackle this? How do you make sure you have, firstly, the intellectual property rights to the data that you use to train your models? And how do you make sure that anyone using the platform to create a piece of music owns the copyright? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is obviously a very interesting area, and it's also the dust hasn't settled, right? So there's a long process in place that is not just Loudly, but also at the level of the European Union and regulations and endless number of lawyers who are looking at it, as well as big business like Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, as high level as Elon Musk and President of the United States, all looking at how do we manage AI and the regulation around it. So I'm not going to comment too much upon that because that's that's a big topic in itself and a lot of, again, vested interests. What I will say is that, I wanted to choose a path in this area that was that would be respectful, right? So there are other companies who have effectively, I guess the word could be used is that they've plagiarized, content on the internet and trained upon it to deliver their new models or their new generative AI capabilities. This stuff happens. Of course, they knew what they were doing, right? And they took a calculated risk in doing so. However, in the music industry, it's a bit different. There's a history of legal precedents and legal action, for good reasons as well. And so I think from my perspective, we made the decision about 4 years ago because the question always came up, well, how do we train the AI and how are we going to do this and how do we improve the quality? So I just said, if I look into the crystal ball, and if we don't do things correctly and do things in a kind of moral way, if we don't respect copyright as it stands today, then there will be an incredible blowback upon us, and it'll be for good reason, but also it'll be because copyright holders will want to protect themselves, and they're going to use loudly as an example, in the public square of opinion will be used as a bad player example. I also spoke to many major labels also a couple of years ago about this topic, and they were very let's say protective and defensive about it. So I kind of knew where the wind was going to blow. So yeah, so based on that, we made a decision a couple of years back that we would only train our models upon music that we had access to in terms of copyright ownership and legitimate rights to access. Secondly, the sounds that we use, I think even more importantly, the sounds that we use to generate new music, we have complete ownership of, and we've maintained that very carefully throughout our development. And we've also made sure that in our system, because we do also handle copyright music in our system, that we just keep it completely separate to our AI system in general. And in maintaining that and keeping and ensuring that, we feel very confident we can conduct our business in a moral and ethical fashion, but also that from a business perspective that we are protected going forward. So because we can prove that we own everything that we have. So we've taken that step very carefully and also very consciously not to go against the existing copyright framework regime that is in place globally, which is really at the end of the day there to protect the original artists, but also protect the owners of those copyrights.
Very good. And artists and creators that create music, do they then own the copyright?
This is also a gray area. There are many different aspects to this that are a bit complicated. I'll give you one example. So one of them is for example, YouTube and content ID, right? So copyright is only as powerful as it is recognized in these big systems. So if you as an artist today, for example, upload a song to YouTube, because you're not recognized as a legitimate entity in YouTube, you cannot claim content ID on your own work. It's very hard, right? So you have to go through a distribution platform that has a direct relationship with YouTube, recognized by YouTube as a legitimate distributor, and there you can request to your distributor that you get recognized within YouTube's content ID system as being the legitimate copyright owner of your own music. And even that is not clear through the distribution partner, and they all behave a bit differently in the service they offer. So what Loudly has to do is be very careful about this, because the question then is, what is creation? So sometimes AI forces us to go back to fundamental questions like, what is it to be human? And what is it to be creative? And what is creation itself? And so the way that we define creation for ourselves at the moment is that when someone requests, or if someone generates or creates music through our platform, we don't see it yet, I think from my perspective, just yet, as being completely an original creation. Because effectively what a user is doing is requesting that our platform generates something new. And even if they put parameters into it, it's effectively generating a new kind of composition based on pre-existing algorithms and patterns, etc. So the imprint of creation and what that means is changing drastically, let's say, dramatically. And then the question is, why should someone, want to have copyright over an AI work? What is their human contribution to that work, and to what degree and to what level? And then what is the price they're willing to pay to get the copyright to that work? So these are all questions that are moving quickly in the marketplace, and different companies have different approaches. Our approach at the moment is that we are willing to grant rights, but at the moment we do not grant the copyright to the songs themselves. We will pursue models in the future where there is more, let's say, human interaction, human creativity. So for example, if you were to sing over a track, then of course you have a genuine claim to copyright over a portion of that music, right? So those we're really open to, but at the moment, until that happens, we're trying to stay a bit safer to protect our business, which is to claim copyright over everything that we generate. But we can grant the rights, right? So we can grant commercial rights, we can grant synchronization rights very easily to the end user.
Fascinating, fascinating area. Maybe you can give us a glimpse into any future developments. Where do you expect Loudly to go in the future? What AI developments are you focusing on?
Sorry. Yeah, so Loudly's future roadmap is exciting, because I'm just trying to see how we can do things, in what order, in what sequence, and how fast can we do them. So maybe the backdrop to this is that a couple of months ago there were, in my opinion, 5 legitimate AI music companies in the market. So it's like we're going to the race, and this is my competitive side coming out. So we're competing with other AI music companies, of course. And there's 5 horses or 5 race cars on the track. But in the last month or two, there's now another 5. So Google published their own music gen platform. There's the one from Meta. There's another one that just recently come out. So suddenly the race looks a little bit tighter and a lot bigger. So now there's, let's say, 10 legitimate players on the race course. So my goal is to always make sure I understand what's happening in the market, to see the competition, to see who's doing what, how they're doing it, how are they pricing it, what rights are they granting to the end user, to what liberty and to what restriction. And at the same time, every single race car has its own approach to AI music. They have their own strengths and weaknesses, and it's incredible how they vary. So no one has exactly the same approach, nor the same technology, nor the same sounds. So this is a really interesting time, and it's a question of like, what do we do next, and why are we doing it, and for what purpose, and how will it benefit the overall music industry in general. So from our roadmap perspective, what we're focusing at the moment is to just keep working towards our strengths. And one of those things is that, again, we have our music format is again interactive. It's music as code. And one thing we want to do next is not just allow people to generate the music, but also to go deeper and to really personalize and customize it, so they can get a richer experience in our web app, right? So once someone generates, that happens pretty quickly. And then I sort of feel like people want to go further. They want to say, well, I need to tweak this. I want to change that, modify this instrument. So we're building out what I'm calling the AI mixer product or feature, which allows people to go much deeper into the music that they've generated, and to further modify it and to further customize it. And this is not just from switching out instruments, but also applying very, very interesting and fun effects across the different instrumentation in the songs that really sounds different, also elevates or changes the mood of the song just from the way that it sounds from an effects perspective. So there's this going to happen very soon. That's one big thing. Secondly, as I said before, I'm working on the interactive music format, which is actually geared much more towards major labels or independent labels who have, let's say, hot catalog that they want to allow users or allow audiences to interact with their songs. So, for example, if you have, let's say, the latest Taylor Swift song, and of course the demand is huge to allow fans to interact with it, then we can convert that into what I call an AI song pack. And then once it's in our system, we can let anyone easily modify it and change it and make it sound different, but allow for that experience to happen in on any website or mobile app. So this is technology we've developed already. So just moving as fast as I can towards a prototype. We can do the same thing for music labels who have a lot of catalog, who want to, what I call, extend their catalog. So if you have 2,000 songs, but you want to actually have 10,000 songs, we can take some of the better songs in your catalog and we can again convert it into our system and then create huge amount of variations of that music. And then the copyright, of course, is given back to the label, so they maintain their business integrity and they can further monetize those variations. So there's a big interest in that as well. Thirdly, we're also looking to integrate with our new API. So we're releasing a public or partner-facing API in October, which will allow us to embed music generation or generative music capabilities in any big tech platform. So whether it's a big video creation tool or a design tool, they can then pull directly from our catalog or to request music directly in their system. So that's a big one as well, to kind of spread the creativity a bit further and faster beyond our web app. And then lastly, I think we're looking at becoming a music label. I think we have no choice. Because we can generate so much catalog and also at pretty high degree of quality. So we like to become a music label for a couple of reasons. One, we want to make sure that we protect our content from a copyright perspective across the major platforms. We will start distributing that as well, which helps us then claim content ID, which again protects our catalog. At the same time, we also want to start working with artists directly and to allow them to, bring their own music into our system and then also claim their own copyrights on that. But we can handle that more as a label perspective. So we can pick and choose artists, or we can also make it a bit more open. But in that sense, we can extend the possibilities of AI. And I guess, big labels don't think of it that way. But from our perspective, we can become a label effectively, and why not? So that's exciting, and these are all big things. The last thing I can talk about is there's a big technology shift over the past, let's say, 2 years around stem separation. So this technology was very bad 2 years ago, and then today it's become very good. And that means that there are companies, for example, like AudioShake, who I think are great, where they can take in any song and then separate the song automatically using AI techniques into the various instrument stems. So whether you have vocals, horns, synthesizer, piano, for example. And this has become pretty much a mass market event. And what that means is that the market now is full of stems, which is great because it wasn't like that, even a year ago. And our system is based on an audio loop format. So our goal is that we can start to integrate stems directly into our system and then, again, allow anyone. So if you're a music creator and you've written, let's say, 5 songs and you want to further experiment with those songs, but you don't feel like doing it all yourself in your DAW, you could bring those stems into Loudly, and then we will then bring those into our system, and then you can use our system to generate more music or generate variations of your own music. So right now, Loudly enables you to generate music from our bank of audio sounds, but the goal would be to let anyone upload the music into our system and then to further generate new music that would really belong more to them, because it would be cut off from the public version. So it'd be your private, kind of like your private AI music library in that sense.
Fascinating. Yeah, there's so much happening. Thank you so much for sharing this all with me. The 2 questions I always ask all my guests is, what about the future are you most concerned about, and what about the future are you most excited about? So what are your concerns about the future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a huge concern about the future of creativity, right? So no matter what we understand about technology and the implications of it, I think because I've been working in AI for so long now, for a couple of years, I'm always forced to think about, what is human creativity and what is AI creativity. I have to, because it's a question I never thought about until I'm in this business, right? But it's a bit philosophical, but I do feel forced every day to think about this so that I understand where can AI be useful and where will it just be useless. And it's okay for it to be useless. It doesn't have to be useful everywhere. And one of the main things I would say is that AI is not the answer to everyone's requirements or needs or creative ambitions. It's simply another, tool in the toolbox that can be used. Can be used very effectively, or it can be used very bluntly, or used carelessly. So I think one concern I have is that there's going to be, again, like what I call unintended consequences. I mean, and by that, no one knows exactly what will happen in the future with AI, with this new era. But I hope that there's not a rush to restrict it too much, because then you don't have the evolution and the progress and the opportunities that can become available. So, I mean, while I'm all for governments and lawyers and the EU moving towards some kind of regulatory framework, we hope that, as the inventors, and I place myself in that kind of category of inventors and people who are pro music artists at the same time, we want to make sure that that we can still develop, invent tools of value, for the wider market. So we hope the restrictions are not too hard, and at the same time, we hope that there is a framework that we can all understand, as a music industry, as a creative industry, that is also well balanced. But then maybe I'm wishing for too much, because that's never easy to achieve. So I think my concerns are low, actually, because I think fundamentally human creativity is something incredible, that I think more people will probably write about to understand what makes us human. And one of the things that makes us human is that we are incredibly creative. And the reasons for that are complex, but it could also have to do with just survival, right? You need to be very creative to survive back, when we were just coming out of the caves. Secondly, we use creativity to tell narratives and tell stories, and stories are incredibly powerful to us, and we seem to need it. And so music is a way of telling stories, and this will never go away. Music is a mass communal event. I mean, music festivals and concerts are never been so popular, so this will never stop. So from that perspective, I have no concern for the creativity that humans have as a species. I think we will just become more creative. And like I said before, the chance now with AI is that more people, a lot more people, get creative. I think that's a great thing. That's a positive impact on the world, because no one will say that creativity is negative. Let's say endeavor. It's a highly positive endeavor. It makes you feel good. You learn new things. You go into the unknown, and that's all part of our experience as humans. That's the adventure.
Amazing. I think you've answered both of the questions. Anything else that you're excited about?
I'm excited just to see, how people react to our new features. I want to launch things fast, trying to go as fast as we can. I want to stay in that race. I want to compete against Meta, compete against Google, compete against the other smaller but very nimble players. We'll see how this all turns out. But all I can say is that it's an incredible journey so far. And the main thing I wanted to make sure people feel is that they can remain creative. And also, when working with labels and artists, that we find ways to bring value to the great artists, to their great material, respect it, and allow, for example, fans to engage with that music in a different way, but in a way that people all agree is fun and engaging and of good value to all parties. So those are my final words for today.
Very good. Thank you so much, Rory. That was really insightful, really thought-provoking. I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you very much for spending some time with me on this. Anyone who wants to ever re-listen or re-watch this conversation and many other similar conversations about the future of business and technology, simply head to my podcast or my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.